Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session. I'm here today with Ralf, and we're doing our session about how to publish a web app to Azure with Visual Studio. Like I said, my name is Tiago. I work as a cloud architect and advisor for the Microsoft Cloud. I'm a Microsoft MVP, work as an independent contractor, and you can find more about me on my Twitter handler, Tiago Costa PT. And Ralf, what about you? All good with you today?
Yes, hello and welcome everybody out of the world to our session here with Tiago and me, showing you some abilities of Visual Studio with a web app going onto Azure and how easy that is. My name is Ralf. I'm working as a lead developer and cloud solution architect at /Net Business GmbH. I'm doing software since 20 years. If you want to go and learn more about me, go to my Twitter at RARI 2003 and follow me on azuredev.org, for instance, as well. Tiago, well, that's so cool to be here tonight.
Yes, it is. And what could be better to be here than doing a session on Learn Live, right?
That's so true. So we want to have you on site and we want to encourage you to go to that link here, https aka ms learn live and all the digits at the end, to take action as well, to go into what we show you today. And we want also to encourage you to make it more live and interactive, to join us using the Q&A, which you maybe have learned in the other sessions as well. Within Teams, you have the Q&A above. Just open it for a while and just say, hey, hello, so that we know you are there. That's so cool. And we have with us a team of moderators taking care of your questions in the Q&A. If they can pass it to us and we have time enough to answer it after the session, we do our best to answer your questions live here in that show. Thank you for joining us again. And now we go over to have a cool session about how to create an ASP.NET Core web app, how to deploy that web app to Azure, and on how to modify and update that web app, and all that just with our favorite development tool, Visual Studio. So first of all, imagine you are a software developer working for a company which is a ski resort, and you want to come up with a new web page for your resort, and therefore you decided to use your favorite development tool, which is Visual Studio, and you are also a C# developer, and you're looking for a way on how to achieve that and on how to host your website properly on a very, very sustainable and very, very reliable web app service. So first of all, you have to install your necessary workloads. What does that mean? To enable Visual Studio to do the things we're talking right now about, is you have to prepare your Visual Studio and you have to prepare that development environment by installing Visual Studio workloads. And what are workloads? Workloads are pretty much nothing more than pre-configured bundles of tools you can install into your Visual Studio, which then can be used for you or by your, which then can be used by you to get your things done. And therefore, we have to install a few tools within our Visual Studio to build and debug and to deploy our ASP.NET Core web app application to Azure. And particularly what is inside such a workload, right? When we look into the workload ASP.NET and web development, you will find there stuff like ASP.NET NuGet packages and SDK, and also technologies like HTML and JavaScript support and so on, which is necessary to have a cool and nice running web page, right? And then you want to deploy that to Azure, and therefore you have the workload Azure development, which particularly nothing has more than the Azure SDK inside for .NET. It also has the Azure Resource Manager tools built in. It has the built applications for Azure Web and Cloud Services and other stuff as well, which you can run on Azure. So we will now install that stuff together on your Visual Studio. To be honest, I've prepped a little bit for you already, but I show you on how to do that. The recommended way is you just open your start and then you go for instantly say search for installer, and that's then coming up with a Visual Studio installer, and you have to open that one. And what you now want to do is you want to modify your Visual Studio installation as you want to add some more workloads to it. So we click on modify, and now it browses all the catalog of available workloads for you, and it's presenting to you. So we are on the tab workloads, and we have here these two workloads which we've spoken a little before. And you also can see when you select that or when you have that installed, what's included into your particular workload. Like we have here the .NET Framework inside and all these other stuff. You can extend your workload with other maybe necessary stuff when you have some legacy projects or so. You want to install that too. And then we have here the Azure development stuff, which particularly has the ASP.NET Build tools inside for Azure, and also framework development tools, and some other stuff here around, which we also spoken about is the Azure Resource Manager tools, which enables your Visual Studio to deploy your web app to Azure workloads. Okay, Azure App Service, I'm sorry, that was the wrong one. Okay. When you're ready and you selected your stuff here, I'm doing that by Python development for you. You see that the button here is going to be modify, and you want to have it installed while downloading. So it does both. It downloads the stuff, and in parallel, it will install the stuff for you, that it's then a little faster for you. Okay, that's done. That we have our Visual Studio ready set up. Now, let's set up our first ASP.NET Core web app. We go back to our Windows 11 and we start right away Visual Studio. That's quickly up, and the performance is increased a lot since 2022. So we go for create a new project, and there we have a bunch of boiler templates for different projects we can run in, like console applications and all that stuff. And we have here the one I've highlighted already, which is the ASP.NET Core Web App. And we select that one, click on Next, and we want to name our project to Alpine Ski House. And you see here, it automatically adds that as your solution name, which is fine for us. We do not change anything here. You can change the location where your project will be stored on your HDD or whatever you're using in your computer. And then we go next. Please ensure that for this exercise, you have selected .NET Core 6 LTS, which is the framework we're going to use, and then don't change anything else here, and just click on Create. Yeah, and we want to overwrite it. I'm sorry, I've tested that before for sure to make sure that the demo god is not hitting me here, and let's see what's coming up. Okay, so now we've created our ASP.NET Core web app, and we want also to run that web app with our on our computer to see whether we did this good or bad. And therefore, we just click here on Alpine Ski House and the play button within your Visual Studio. And then you can see in the output window where when it is selected to build, that you have all the information, what's on behind the scenes running for your application. And all the magic happens now that that web page is built, and you can see we are running it on localhost on port 7129. And we have our lovely new web page where we can start from and have a nice nice starting point for the development of your web app. And we have here the privacy policy, and you can see use this page forever. So that's just the boilerplate template. So I think this is really a great starting point. If you can't follow me, go back to the link I've shared with you. There are step-by-step explanations, and that should be a great point for you to start off. And well,
Yeah,
I guess that's cool running it on your own desktop, right? To have a good development experience.
well, you know, I'm more of an Azure person, so I will say that this will run way better if we have, you know, this and when an Azure App Service on Azure, because in your computer only you can get to them. I can't see that app
That's so
myself. If I
true,
wanted
Tiago.
to
That's
try
so
from my
true.
machine here, I can't. And
Yeah.
we
That's
want to
cool.
have guests from other computers, not just people that use your computer in our
Yeah.
ski resort, right? So I think
Yes.
it will be nice to have this deployed on the cloud. So
Okay,
I think it will
Tiago,
be
I'm
very
throwing that over
important.
to you. Take over.
Yeah. I'm just going to take over now. And I'm just going to exactly, you know, just talk a little bit about the app service, okay, and what we can do with this and why we are going to do this in the app service. So you should be seeing my screen now, and we're going to use the Azure App Service so that we can take Ralph's app that he did with huge effort, hours and hours of coding, you know, to build that application and be able to publish this on the web so that other people can also see our application and, of course, be guests of our ski resort. So we have this new website and we want to deploy it. Azure App Service is a great place for that. We can host web applications, we can host REST APIs and backend services. So basically, I usually like to describe this as you can run HTTP-based applications on the Azure App Service. You can even run containers too on the Azure App Service functions. So all of that stuff can run in the Azure App Service. It's a service that's just way more than just running a web app there. Okay, you can do way other stuff. But there's one thing. First step, we need to create something that we call, which is the Azure App Service Plan. This is the plan that will define all the compute resources that our app will be able to consume, like how many CPUs you're going to have, how much RAM you're going to have, in which region this is going to run. And this, for example, the region, you know, it's a very, very important step, because imagine that I have loads of customers in Europe, you know, because our ski resort, you know, is in Europe, for example, in the Alps somewhere. And so it's more natural that we have more people trying to visit that are more local, so more in Europe. So I probably will not be a bad idea if I choose one region that is going to be in Europe instead of, you know, choosing a region like Japan West, okay, or Australia, because the latency that I will have to those regions will be much higher than I will have for something like more local. I can also define the number of VM instances that are going to run on the app service plan. So the app service plan, if you do it through the portal, usually just start with one. But then you can configure scaling on this, manual scaling in some plans. Some other plans already allow you to do auto scaling and configuring rules defining how this is going to scale. There's a bunch of pricing tiers that they range from free up to isolated, but we have a slide further that we kind of going to cover that, so I don't want to spend that much time on that. But I want to go on this one here, which is we have this app service plan, you know, it's all this box, and I have several web applications running in here. All those web applications, they're running side by side in the same compute resources. So let's imagine that I have very small applications that, you know, they don't have that much load, they don't have much traffic, they are small. Sure, you can run a bunch of them all together, no problem whatsoever. But if you have bigger applications that really require a lot of performance, they really require a lot of your app service plan, well, maybe it's not a great idea, you know, to run them side by side. So you might need an app service plan specifically for that application.
So, Tiago, would you recommend me to have the test app and the productive app on the same application service plan, or what do you recommend to handle that stuff? As you're saying, my app is very small, I don't have that much traffic and I don't have that much compute consumption. Is that a thing you would recommend too?
Well, by the way, great question that you have, and because that's a very common question that we get from customers. And let me explain a little bit further. We have something called deployment slots, and for running, your example, which is a production and having, like, let's just say non-production, okay, like development, for example. We can run them on a slot, and then the slots allow me to, test that stuff, and then I can say, oh, this is good. Let me swap this into production. It works pretty well. But there is a catch here, which is if you run those two things side by side in the same app service plan, and let's imagine, not you, but if it was me, for example, that I will wrote bad code. You will never do that. I know that, Ralf. But imagine me, I just wrote very, very horrible code that will have a huge impact on the performance, can even broke something. This will affect production because they are actually running, side by side in the same host. And we do not want that. So in those cases, when you're talking about production environments, non-production environments, I can always recommend people, hey, create 2 app service plans, use deployment slots, and have the non-productive deployment slot running in a different app service plan. You still have the capabilities of swapping and all of that, but you're not going to affect production, even if it's a small app, like you said. Okay, even if it's a small application, usually this is always my advice. Okay, because if you don't do this, well, definitely one day you're going to have a surprise. And most of the times, you're not going to have that surprise because everything goes well. We are amazing developers. We don't do that many mistakes, but one day is a day. Okay, and then you're going to impact production. We do not want to play around with that. Okay, but yeah, great question. Thanks for that.
Thanks, yeah.
So what about tiers? So like I said, we had here a bunch of different tiers. We kind of categorized them into 3, okay, different categories. Shared, basically, we have the free and shared. Those are the 2 base tiers that we have. But we need to understand one thing with those. They run in an Azure virtual machine that is shared with other customers, not just you, other customers. So your actually app running in the free tier can run in the same Azure virtual machine as mine, as Ralf. And of course, this will have a big impact on performance, or the lack of it, if you really need that performance. I'm not saying that the free is a bad tier. It's an awesome tier. You know what? To do this lab, to do what we're going to do, if you want to try this in your own subscription and you don't want to spend any money, just run this on the free one. It works. Everything that we're going to do, it works on the free. No problem whatsoever with that. If you want just to play around, learn something, free is awesome. My advice, if you've run productive environments, you need to go to one of the dedicated computes that we have here. The dedicated computes, to be totally honest, they change totally here the way that we run our applications, the way that we work with this, because you're going to have a dedicated Azure virtual machine just for you. With the beauty part that you don't have to manage that Azure virtual machine. It's not that it's a VM that you need to patch, you need to install updates, think about security. No, all that, it's taken care by Azure. Azure takes care of all of that. And then, like I said, you can have more than one virtual machine in the back. We call them instances, by the way. We don't call it VMs. We call it, oh, I have this app service that runs on 3 instances, 4 instances. And then with the magic of auto scaling, you can scale your app to more, so scale out to more instances or scale into less instances, depending on the load that you're actually getting on your virtual machine. So this elasticity that we can have with this will save you like tons of money in the long run, because it's not like on-prem where you need to have the number of virtual machines that you need for the peak on the demand. Here, no. Here you can play around with less or more machines depending on the load that you're going to get. There's a 3rd tier, isolated, amazing tier. So for example, the premium V3, you can get up to 30 instances on that one. It's a lot already. but sometimes you might need more. Isolated can go up to 100, but that's not the decisive feature where most people will go for the isolated. The deciding feature is VNet isolation. So when you create this, you can say, I want this web app running on that app service plan, which is going to be an isolated service plan. And this web app here will not have internet access. You can get to that limit. You can get, for example, your users that are running they're running their computers on-prem, they're in their offices, and they need to connect to this web app, and they're going to connect through a private connection that goes from the office private network through a VPN, through express route, and they go through a virtual network running on Azure where your Azure web app is running. From the internet, you do not have access to this. So this is a type of configuration you can do on the isolated. It doesn't need to be always like this. You can configure also with internet access. Okay, just a disclaimer here. But usually, when we choose this, is to build the first scenario that I was telling you. But
what about creating a web app, Tiago? I would love to see how to create a web app.
My God, you're making me work a lot today. I'm already kind of sweating here. Okay, let's do that then.
Calm down, buddy. That's by a finger snap of you, isn't it?
So let's do here then. I was even already ready and everything because I really knew that you were going to ask me to do that. So cool. let's create here a new resource. And when we create a new resource, well, you can see here that I already have web apps, and you can just click create and you can go to there. Look, there is plenty of ways of doing this, but I always like to go here and search for stuff, because even if it's not here, it's kind of a way that works for everything. So you search for a web app and you find this here. So I will just say create, and I will choose web app, and I get to the, basically the window, that explains on how to create a web app. You need to choose a subscription. I have this subscription here, and I need to choose one resource group. I could create one, but let's just go with this one that we have here called build web app -demo. I love the name. I need a name for my app. And if you just type, like, for example, my app, you will see that, hey, this is not available. So you need to find a name that is available and is from the subset of .azurewebsites.net.
Sorry,
so something
Tiago,
like a subdomain. I used
that already.
You already used that, my app. It's yours. Oh, damn. So let's go and let's type like Microsoft Learn on Microsoft Build. Let's see if this one is available. Oh, it is available. I didn't test this like 15 minutes ago. No, not for sure. Then I need to choose the runtime stack code. And because, Ralf did this app on .NET 6, so I'll just find here, the same framework. If you have done this in Python or Go or something else, just choose that. As you can see here, this supports way more than just .NET. Supports Go, supports Java, Node.js, PHP, Python, and Ruby. But today we're doing .NET. .NET is the best, so let's just go with that. Then what about the region? What do you think, Ralf? We're going to have lots of people from Europe.
Let's cut down the latency a little.
Let's work out that.
Latency.
Yeah. What do you think, North Europe?
Ocean. Yes, that's a good thing.
That's a good one. Let's go with North Europe then. Okay. So the idea here, like we were discussing, is finding that low latency, finding a region that is closer to your users. Okay, that's the way to do it. Then of course there's also some other issues here that might involve you designing from another region, like compliance, data residency, and things like that. But today we're not talking about that topic. So low latency, that's what we want. Then I need to create here a plan. I don't like this name. My God, what the hell is this name here? Let's just create something here cooler, like Microsoft Build. Microsoft Build is always a cool name. So ASP, from App Service Plan, and then pricing plan. Okay, now here we can choose what is the pricing plan that we need. If we click on the combo box, you'll see here the most popular plans that you have. Of course, if I hit this explore pricing plan link, I can get here all the pricing plans that exist. And it ranges from this free one here, see the free one, and it goes down up to stuff like like premium, v3, p5, vm3 that costs something like around like 4,000 months, 4,000 euros a month. This is not my subscription, is Ralph's subscription. I think this is a great size. Let's go with that.
You don't dare.
And now you see, now Ralph is sweating. See how it's done? It's like this, okay? We don't
Payback
need,
time.
to be honest. We don't need this, okay? I think standard S1, I think it's enough. We don't want, we want that Ralph finishes the session today, so we don't want him to pass out. So this one is way cheaper. And look, it does a great work, to be honest. Only very specific workloads are going to need those very expensive ones. Usually this is more than enough. You can also, here on the top, there is also a hardware view, but also this other one here that we have, which is called a feature view. Got it? You can also go there and choose feature view and see some of the features that you have or you do not have, or how many do you have. Like, for example, daily backups. Standard only has 10. But look, we're doing a demo here. It's more than enough. Staging slots, 5. Again, more than enough. But if you needed more, look, you need to go to one of the, higher tiers. That's what it is. So a hardware view, yeah, standard is great. Let's go with that. Then let's hit this next. Let's go to deployment. Here, you can even integrate this with GitHub. So if you have GitHub here, you could just click enable and say, hey, that repo over there, and this will write the GitHub action for to integrate the CI/CD pipeline on this. It's really awesome what it does. We have a bunch of more options. We also have monitoring. I will say no to monitoring in here. Look, not saying monitoring, you should not have monitoring. You should always have monitoring. I just choose no because,
You're trusting me.
I'm trusting Ralph, but this is just a demo, and I don't want to create another resource on this. That's kind of the idea today, is just focusing on the app service, focusing on building an app and deploy that app. We're not here today to talk about monitoring, so I disabled monitoring so that we have one last thing being created. But in the real world, where we always are during our daily jobs, look, sure, having monitoring, having application insights, it's a must to have. You need to have that. Okay. But like I said, yeah, today is just a demo day, so let's not go with that. It's finished. See, it's really quick. Let's go to the resource and let's see this app here. And if I browse this, okay, in here, and this open here in another screen, so there, just move it here. We have this amazing landing page here. That, by the way,
I find it
everyone can come on, Rolf, because everyone can get to this app and not yours. Okay, yes. But this app, everyone can get. So I think, what do you think about this app? Do you want to change it?
Yeah, let me do some changes on it, Tiago. Thanks a lot for providing me an Azure App Service so that we can go further to put our code onto that app service to make it more useful in the meaning of having the Alpine ski house in the back where we want to have an app service running for us. So let's go back to our Visual Studio code and let's Visual Studio make my mistake. I've seen a question. Does the same thing work for VS Code? It is slightly different there. On Visual Studio Code, you will also install extensions for your deployment stuff. The naming is a little bit different. You don't have the workloads there, but if you seek for in the extensions Azure, you'll find a proper Azure tool which will install the common toolings for Visual Studio Code to deploy stuff to Azure. So I hope that answers your questions. Maybe our moderators can go further and put a link into the Q&A to point you onto the right page. So go back to our page. We just want now to make our web app become alive, right? We have it on the local host. We've seen it there. And now we want to publish it onto Azure. So we just have to right-click on the project folder within our solution browser. We go to publish. And now we're going through that assistant. And yeah, as I've said before, I have just, there's a mistake. I have to delete that file. I guess that's a better way. Let's remove that one. And we go again into that. We've tested it before, and I'm afraid it would go now to the wrong service. So let's publish again. Let's see, overview here, and I want to publish what's happening at a publish profile. So now we select Azure as we want to go to Azure App Service, and we click Next. We don't want to go to Azure Container Apps as we want to deploy an Azure App Service. And Tiago selected Windows underneath that service. So we also select Azure App Service for Windows, click Next, and then we wait for our assistant here to browse our Azure tenant and subscription to show the possible services we can go to. And at this point, you can see the app service Tiago just created pops up here. I can select that one, and then I click Finish. And then what happens is in behind, it creates the publish profile, which I just deleted before from the older test we did. And then I close it, and then now you have that tiny button over there, which is saying publish. And we just do that, hit the button, and we will see again what's happening here. Our build is starting, and it'll do the same stuff like it does when it goes for local deployments. And now it will extend our web app and will translate all the files into HTML files and JavaScript files, as a browser is not capable to run .NET code inside. So we have to have that app rebuilt and packaged in the form that the web app service is going to handle it and is capable to handle it. So that takes a little while, and it will. Now you can see it is initializing, and here you can see all the files which are added to our project to the www root folder. So now the web app is restarting, and bam, here we are. We have our Alpine ski house, and we have the home here. We have our privacy policy there. And that's it, particularly how easy you can deploy a web app to Azure App Service. So while we've said that,
Tiago now is way more happy because now, our ski resorts can start get reservations from all over the world and not just from your computer.
That's true. True story. Okay, now we've seen on how easy it is to set up a boiler template for ASP.NET Core web app, and we've also seen how easy it is to deploy an Azure App Service with Azure Portal. Mm-hmm. Now let's go into our boiler template to understand what's inside there.
Yeah, exactly. I have some questions there, by the way. Can you open the project again?
Yeah, okay. Here we go.
Can you explain that file structure, that all those folders? Why do you have so many folders there? Like pages, www root, connected services. Can you explain further a little bit about that part there?
Yeah, I do that often to my students. They ask frequently me that question. So I may explain that for you for sure. Tiago, bear a second.
Go ahead.
So we have a solution. Inside our solution, we have a project file, which is just common understanding on how Visual Studio is handling our development projects, right? And with that, we get a bunch of folders. As you've said, we have that connected services here, which is the place where like local services are coming into, where you connect your project to local services to get it running within or to be used within your project. We have the dependencies like ASP.NET Core, like the frameworks we have to use. We have the properties where you've seen earlier, our publish profile, for instance, and you also have there the local settings or the local launch settings, which is the way to tell your Visual Studio on how to start your application locally and on which port it shall expose and all that stuff. With the www root folder, that's the place where our HTML, JavaScript, images, PHP, whatever you have in there will live in. And we have then the pages, and the pages is something very special. And I just want to go a little back to my slides to explain you a little bit more there. We have in our in that folder pages files with a type of being a razor page. Do you know what's razor, Tiago?
Yeah, it's like for doing the shaving, you know?
Yeah, that's true. So razor is a format on how you can have your C# code in later on translated into HTML. And therefore, Razor has a syntax which enables ASP.NET to have dynamic web pages written in C#. And then we have those directives with the add on before, like add page, which tells ASP.NET to handle that as a page. And we have that add model, which tells ASP.NET that this is going to be a C# class or something like that, or a submodule or whatever you want to have to be included into that page. So it is possible to load that. As you can see here, we have add page and we have add privacy model. So how does that look in our code? Let's go back to our code. We have here our privacy CS HTML, and we have here the privacy model, and then that means that the privacy model includes that privacy stuff inside. That's all about the Visual Studio boiler template folder structure. So what we have next is, yeah, you may come up with that hint. So I guess you want me to update this
Yeah,
page a little,
I think
don't
that's
you?
that's a good point because I was exactly now thinking about that. You know, we want to launch. We're launching our ski resort. We have to launch a promotion. You know,
Yeah.
only for people that are attending Microsoft Build, they can come to our ski resort for like an amazing price. I think we need to change the website and putting something on our front page saying, hey, Microsoft Build attendees, you're welcome to come at an amazing price, you know. So I think
Okay.
we need to do that. My question for you
Okay.
is, for us to do that, do you need to like what, just build another app and another app
No.
service plan? And do I need to create
Oh
another app service
no,
plan
no,
here,
hell
or
no.
how can we do that?
Let me show you how easy that is. Let's go back to Visual Studio. And we're
Yeah.
here, and I would say that when we go into our privacy page, which is a boring text in there, use this page to detail, blah, blah. Who wants to read that? So when you want to go and to show that to your boss, look, I'm amazing. I did that stuff here and we're all in. I just want to change that particular line here to
Yeah.
demonstrate on how easy it is. I've saved that file already, and now I don't have to do anything else. I just go back to my project folder and I hit that publish button again. Then this page comes up, and there I go, and just hit
Oh
publish
wow.
again.
Just
And
hit
what's
publish.
happening now? Look at the build output. It is recognizing that we did just slightly changes. You remember we waited a few minutes to have the first deployment onto the app service. And
Mhm.
when you're seeing now, we have just two files updating. So it is going to figure out which is the change in your project and is just replacing those files. And what is now going on? We have that live. It is here. So let's have a look onto privacy. What? There we go,
Whoa.
Tiago.
Yeah. So basically
It's
it
that
just
easy.
detects just the changes that we did on, because it was just an HTML change, and it just changes, you right, that part. It doesn't need to compile the whole project again and build for publishing and uploading all the
Yes.
DLLs, etc. That's
Yep.
pretty cool. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So
And
we've
let me
seen,
just add something that
yeah.
one of the things that I love on, you know, the technology that we're using here to publish is that I still see sometimes people using, you know, like FTP uploads to upload stuff to app services or other web hosters out there. And it's kind of a knife in my heart every time I see that, because FTP is a great protocol, but it's not to publish applications, okay? We have proper technology for that for years. So just use what Rolf explained. It will do a huge favor to mankind, to be totally honest, because this is the proper way to deploy applications is using technology like this for sure.
I mean, that's for true and so sure. That's so true what you've said just a second ago, Tiago, and I'm completely with you at that point. Okay, so having a smart look to our watch, I have to summarize what we've done just a few minutes ago. We just had a boiler template ASP.NET Core web app. We had a web app which was deployed to Azure. We had a glimpse on what is an Azure App Service, how to create it using the portal. Tiago showed us a lot around that app service, and there is more to explore, as you have maybe the necessity of having a front door before you want to route, you want to have load balancer and all that stuff. We're just looking onto a glimpse of the possibilities here at that app service. And also we updated our web app using Visual Studio the whole time. We did nothing else. We hadn't had to set up a CI/CD pipeline or whatever stuff. We just did our small proof of concept on how an ASP.NET web app is going to be alive on an Azure App Service in Azure, running within less of 40 minutes. And we also had a glimpse about what are razor pages, how are they used to, why are they important to C# developers doing stuff for web, and so on. And Tiago, did I miss something?
No, definitely not. I just want to add some stuff on things that easily you can do with Azure App Services. For example, getting a custom domain, and because probably you don't want for branding concerns, you're not going with MS-Learn on Microsoft build.azurewebsites.net for our ski resort. Maybe we have a name for our ski resort. So it's like the name of our ski resort.com, something like that. So and adding those, it's easy. It's not that hard, to be honest. They also come with free HTTPS certificates, tier dependent. We can have other features like we talked about a little bit, like deployment slots, so that we can, try something in a dev slot and then, oh, this is good, let's swap it to another to the productive slot. We can configure scaling on this. And look, all these things, explore this, to be honest. And I'm sure you can reach out to me via Twitter. You can reach out, Rolf, and already, volunteering. Rolf is a community person, so he loves to help others, like I do. So if you have some questions, just ping us online. I'm sure we will be able to, just give you some more links to Microsoft Learn, because Microsoft Learn has content on all of this. So if you don't find it on your own, just reach out and we can guide you into the right page, into the right link. But this is like an amazing service. I've been using this since the times of Windows Azure, and this was called Azure Websites, really back in the days.
Mm-hmm.
And the evolution and everything that the service is having
Went through.
across the
That's so
years it's
amazing.
amazing. Hmm?
Yeah. Yeah, the evolution the service went through was amazing. That's a true thing for sure.
Yeah. And if you have
Great.
some questions now, I think we can,
Yeah, we
we
can
can
get
answer
some
some
of them.
questions here.
I've opened the page already, so rewatch the episode on demand. So that's Kimberly saying, okay, we
Yeah.
do not have any questions left. Let me just add a thing to Tiago's mentioning about contacting us. Stick with your local communities. There are for sure Azure communities around you. Go visit them, take the knowledge from there, network with that community guys, and get in touch. And then latest on, or not latest, last but not least, get your fingers dirty, get your hands on that stuff, try it out. Within the Learn, you have also that sandboxes where you can have the experience of that stuff without having an Azure subscription at all. So please visit Microsoft Learn, and go into it and explore Azure and try out. And if there are any questions, as Tiago said, come back to us. So here's again the link, and also the QR code. Please leave us a message, rate us fine, say hello or bye, whatever you want to. For us, it is good night and bye-bye to all of you. Tiago.
Yeah, just bye-bye, everyone, and keep pushing, keep building. If you're new building stuff, you're new coders, just keep pushing because it's the only way to go. It's moving forward. Sometimes you are desperating, but that makes parts of the process. Okay, that's all. Thanks for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure to be here. So good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending from which where you are viewing us today.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care at all.